Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Mangi, and I'm Kenosha Unified Superintendent, and I'm here to say a few words about the libraries. Um, my first experience growing up with a public library was back in the early 50s. I was probably 8, 9, or 10 years old, and um, our public library was right on the corner of Forest Home and 43rd Street in Milwaukee, across the street from Jackson Park. And Jackson Park was the place where all of us kids gathered together to play football and baseball and have a good time. And here was this little library across the street on the corner, one story, two rooms. And one day in the summer, after a ball game, I ventured across the street and walked in and felt a little intimidated at first because it seemed to be like an adult place, but the librarian was really kind and helped me fill out a library card, and then there you go. The library was there, and at the time it was in the early 50s. It was post World War II, and so we were all of us kids in that age group were building plastic models of airplanes and ships, and I remember putting together a Spitfire and a B-52 bomber and a destroyer, and that's what we did as kids when we weren't playing ball. And we also had, just like we had baseball cards after World War II, there were cards that we would trade of famous battleships, famous scenes in World War II, famous planes. So a lot of our culture, a lot of that era was post World War II, and it was still fresh in everybody's minds. In addition to all of the great black and white movies of that era, Casablanca and Sabotage from Alfred Hitchcock, and I was just mesmerized by these spy movies and World War II hero movies with G.I. Joe and Audie Murphy. So, as I remember, the first books I took out of the library were about World War II heroes, and that all of the situations, whether it was Europe or Japan. So, I remember beaming, feeling like $1,000,000 because the library let me take out more than one book, and I had thought that you take out one book at a time, and when they said no, you can take out two or three, I walked out of there like, oh, I just on cloud nine, like, I pilfered something or whatever. I mean, it's an unusual feeling. And so moving on from there, Marquette University, I spent a lot of time in the stacks at Marquette University, couldn't afford to live on campus, so I commuted, and there was no quiet place at home ever to study. But Marquette's library had stacks, as we called them, and there were nooks and crannies all over that library that nobody bothered you. I felt like a king in a castle. Here I had my own little cubicle, was dead quiet, and I could lose myself in my studies, or thinking about, my future. In addition to that, Marquette University, of course, is located downtown, and maybe 3 blocks from there was the Milwaukee Public Library on Wisconsin Avenue. And that place was iconic, marble floors, and it introduced me to international magazines, newspapers from France, England, London, Italy, magazines from all over the world, famous foreign film stars. It just opened a whole new vista. I really love that place. I could get lost in there forever. And so that's my history of my earliest experiences with libraries. To this day, I still love them. I can go in and peruse magazines. Now, of course, there are, DVDs and all kinds of other things. But back in the day, it was a quiet place to study. You felt like you were in another world. It's hard to explain, but for my generation, for kids in that age group, it just opened up a whole new world for me. I think I learned my love of books from that little library in the corner of 43rd and Forest Home, not very big, 2 rooms. I felt like an adult when I walked in. I was only 8 years old. So, yeah, I love libraries.